So now, bullshit off the decks, what do we know so far about the Epstein files? Well, for one, I think it's quite clear that we're watching probably the biggest cover-up in our lifetime unravel in real time. I mean, 9/11 could have been bigger if we'd had a 9/11 Files Transparency Act, but alas. Also, this cover-up in some way or another may involve 9/11. Iran-Contra, Gamergate, Pizzagate, QAnon, COVID denial, and vaccine hysteria, the rise of cryptocurrency, Palantir, and the emergence of the modern rising surveillance state, and may well have shaped a lot of modern US and global culture and politics. I mean, he's truly a Forrest Gump figure of modern national nightmares. But unlike Forrest Gump, you know, the more I hear about this guy, Jeff Epstein, the more I don't care for him. R.I.P. Norm Macdonald. They're just wild emails that suggest that they're referring to victims, first of all, just as victims. Apparently in code using food, although notably not pizza. I think they just are all really actually like stoked on pizza. Explicitly referring to grape and torture, he ordered 6 55-gallon drums of industrial-grade sulfuric acid in 2018 and allegedly tried to use his New Mexico Zorro Ranch location as a baby farm to spread his seed. But how did he accomplish all of this with impunity for as long as he did? Well, let's take it from the top. I've created this timeline of Jeffrey Epstein's entire adult life and professional career. I find this instructive because a lot of things get conflated across decades. For example, I was talking with someone that used the argument that if Donald Trump were implicated in the Epstein files, the Democrats would have released them 10 years ago. To which I pointed out that 10 years ago, there were no Epstein files as we have them today. 10 years ago, Epstein was committing his crimes. And as it turns out, seemingly with the tacit allowance or protection of people involved in the first Trump administration. Not only that, Trump himself is implicated many times in crimes pending an investigation that his FBI director is clearly refusing to initiate. And a lot of people still seem to have trouble conceptualizing that Epstein was arrested for the second time and died during the first administration. So that's why, if you map it out, you start to get a clear picture of the evolution of these crimes and how these networks start to manifest and grow. Each of these ticks is a year. First, in 1974, at 21, he's at the Dalton School, a New York City Ivy League prep school, as a calculus and mathematics teacher. He would have taught high school grades 9 through 12. Needless to say, inappropriate behavior was noticed. He was dismissed for poor performance 2 years later. Next, he works for Bear Stearns, starts as a junior assistant to a floor trader, quickly moves up to an options trader. He's a smart guy with numbers, no doubt. He became a limited partner by 1980. He was asked to leave in 1981 for a Regulation D violation. As far as I can tell, Regulation D requires an offer or sale of securities to be registered with USEC. He then started his own consulting firm, Intercontinental Assets Group, Inc. IAG was a company where he did consulting for very wealthy clients on corporate embezzlement and investment strategies. It's also where things start to get interesting because this is where Les Wexner enters. This is where some of the earliest accusations against Epstein and Donald Trump in the files take place. And it also corresponds almost perfectly with another infamous US scandal, the Iran-Contra affair. Basically, to recap Iran-Contra, for those of you who don't know, from 1981 to 1986, despite Congress prohibiting U.S. funding to a brutal cocaine-peddling resistance group in Nicaragua, the Contras, the Reagan administration began to do so through the profits from arms trafficking to Iran, despite already funding Iraq in their war against them. This was facilitated by mediators such as Saudi businessman and arms dealer, the now late Adnan Khashoggi, who negotiated the movement of weapons between Israel, another go-between, and Iran. One good question here, is this the guy Epstein learned trafficking from? Because in the 80s, Khashoggi was hailed as the richest man alive and had a reputation for his geopolitical influence and opulent lifestyle, which earned him the moniker the Great Gatsby of the Middle East. He was also an early client of Jeffrey Epstein in his IAG period, along with Les Wexner, around 84-ish. Some of these meetings are unclear. We still have no official record when Jeffrey and Ghislaine met, for instance. Former associate Stephen Hoffenberg claimed that this is when Epstein was trained by British defense contractor Sir Douglas Leese in arms smuggling, shell company creation, and money laundering, and helped smuggle Chinese weapons as well to Iran. And an anonymous FBI informant claimed that Epstein was trained as a spy under Ehud Barak, who would later become prime minister as early as this, already a full-blown co-opted Mossad agent. Now, these are all unverified claims. What we do know is that Epstein had an Austrian passport with a false name, where his residence was listed in Saudi Arabia at this time, and after the Iran-Contra affair had come to light, Jeffrey quietly helped repurpose the planes the CIA used to transport arms from Israel to Iran to Les Wexner for Abercrombie and Fitch to transport their clothing. Soon after, he was given Wexner's power of attorney. There are also two hugely notable allegations in the Epstein files from victims that take place at this time directly against Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, and a third in the files, oddly, just against Trump. The first one I call Biter and Victim 2. Both talked to the FBI in 2019, saying that in 1983, Epstein introduced Biter to Donald Trump in New York or New Jersey when they were between 13 and 15. Trump said he didn't like that Biter was a tomboy type. Despite that, she was subsequently pushed into his exposed member. She bit his member, and he slapped her and kicked her out. Victim 1 had been privy to this exchange. The FBI purportedly called Biter to be interviewed ultimately 4 times, and some of it was even used in the case against Ghislaine Maxwell. But of these 4 interviews, only the first one, which didn't include this story or Donald Trump directly, was initially released. We still knew this story existed, however, from an FBI PowerPoint presentation detailing the Epstein files. In that first interview, which was initially released, Biter showed the FBI a well-known picture of Epstein and Trump and asked that Trump be cropped out because he was afraid of involving high-profile people due to safety concerns. Congress recently made them release the other interviews, which they claimed were incorrectly marked as duplications. Very, very likely. Very convenient. It's the other interviews that include these accusations against Trump, and multiple factual claims made by Biter have been verified, including Biter's mother's imprisonment for embezzlement from her company, which Epstein set up in order for her to pay him extortion money from pictures he had of her daughter. She said he ruined her family. Biter also detailed constant targeted harassment and silencing throughout her life after these experiences, and eventually stopped cooperating with authorities when her car was run off the road several times. She said she couldn't be sure whether some of this harassment was initiated by Epstein or Trump. Then there are 2 other allegations from around this time, one from a victim that claimed her uncle trafficked her to Trump and Epstein, who both raped her several times when she was 13, and that Trump was there as a witness when her uncle disposed of her unalived infant daughter's body in Lake Michigan in 1984. The implication being that her daughter was the product of her being trafficked. And then another from a caller who gave a tip to the FBI about her friend, Victim 1. Victim 1 confided in caller that she had been out drinking and ended up at Trump Plaza in 1987. A man approached her and asked her if she wanted to meet Donald Trump. The man then gave her a drink, and the next thing she knew, she woke up on a bed, sore, with $300 on the mantle. Victim 1 did confide in her friend that she felt like she had been raped and did see a flash of Donald Trump's face, but didn't go to the police because she was drunk and thought they wouldn't believe her. Furthermore, Victim 1 was having an affair at the time with her attorney, who was married. After a fight, she was seen in a bar with a man no one there recognized, not the attorney, but that seemed to know Victim 1. After they left the bar, she was never seen again, which is why the caller was calling. The most interesting thing about this last accusation is that while it's very disturbing, I don't understand why it's in the Epstein files if it doesn't involve Jeffrey Epstein. What leads were they pursuing when they collected this? What does the FBI know that we don't? It's also a secondhand account of a drunk victim who disappeared, and while I think this certainly speaks to a pattern, could this be roped into the files because it involves intel Epstein had on Trump? Or is it yet another modified limited hangout? I want to make it clear, I don't know what's true here, but I maintain all of it ought to be taken seriously in a bigger picture by the FBI, and they should be listening to and protecting these victims. Anyway, increasingly embroiled in scandal, exit Khashoggi officially, enter Les Wexner in a big way. Les buys Epstein his apartment on Manhattan's Upper East Side, 9 East 71st Street, the one which U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, who bought the apartment next door a decade later in 1998, and has made it clear, eerily clear, that Epstein was in apartment 9 and he was in apartment 11. Once he moved in is when he placed himself meeting Epstein with his wife and decided to never see that disgusting individual again. Oh wait, I also took my kids to the island that one time. Oh wait, I went without them that other time. Oh wait, I also co-founded that company with him. Speaking of, he, Jeffrey, starts his own company, J. Epstein & Co., right before moving in himself in 1988, which he would do business under until his death. He then buys his Palm Beach property in Florida in 1990 and Zorro Ranch in New Mexico in 1993. And this is around when an account of a limo driver for Trump that gave testimony to the FBI would have happened, around 1995, where he heard our 45th president on the phone with someone named Jeffrey, and they discussed abusing a girl. The driver later transported a girl that explicitly accused Trump and Epstein of forcing themselves on her, and that she feared for her life if she reported it. Later, on Christmas Day, 1999, she called the driver to say that she did, in fact, report it to the police. The driver said she had done good. Then on the 10th of January 2000, he saw the news that her head had been blown off in Kiefer, Ohio. Police at the scene said they didn't think it could have been self-inflicted, but the coroner ultimately ruled it as such. It's also around this time in 1995 that Katie Johnson's story starts, and another serious accusation in the Epstein files against Donald Trump, along with a series from Jane Doe and Tiffany Doe, and to be clear, these are pseudonyms to protect the victims. And I'll spare you most of the gory details on her accusations because this video of Katie exists discussing everything with her lawyer, except to say she remembered she was 13 because Trump took an interest in her because she looked like his daughter, who was 13 at the time. Katie Johnson also speaks to a pattern because she's the only one of these victims that Donald Trump and Epstein share that actually survived and came forward to try to sue them. Between their two networks, these victims all recount threats against them, their family, physical harm, reputational harm, and economic harm if they ever come forward. Most of these victims and anonymous tips are dismissed and characterized by investigators as unreliable or suspect, or at least they now are. Often they cite that these tips came out before the 2016 or 2020 elections. I think it's clear that, especially then, it takes enormous courage and also some sort of patriotic duty to report these stories describing the crimes of powerful men like this. And it seems to me that testimony that risks much and fits a pattern and motive should be given more weight, not less, especially at this volume. Katie Johnson, for instance, ended up dropping her suit in the lead up to the 2016 election, in which Donald Trump was the candidate because she was getting death threats. In 1998, Jeffrey buys Little St. James, a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which has long been a notorious trafficking route, mainly drugs, but humans too,